Record.
Recording in progress.
So good evening, everyone. I want to apologize again for canceling well, not last week, I guess it was the week before. Um, like I said, my work schedule's insane currently. But I did post, if you didn't know or didn't look on Moodle yet, I did post a recorded kind of lecture to cover some of the things we didn't cover yet and go over again some of the highlights of using Westlaw. Um, we had an assignment due. I will grade those in the next couple of days, and give each of you feedback individually as you prepare for the midterm. Does anyone, before we talk about today's stuff, does anyone have questions, comments, concerns on anything we've covered up until today? Go for it.
It's just about the messaging. I don't know if anybody else had trouble with this, but when I was logged on and waiting for class to start 2 weeks ago, you had sent a message, but I guess it didn't show up until after I had come back into Moodle the next day. So I didn't even see it.
Yeah,
And then it seems
that's
like,
strange.
yeah, it is. It seems like it doesn't kind of update in real time, or maybe I'm just not as observant. And yeah, so and I was looking around and poking at everything. So like looking at the announcements, the forum, the messages, and uh, the little bell at the top of Moodle that lets you know that something's happened in your classes. And it was just nothing was there. Um, so I mean, if anyone else had that same problem, maybe we need a better way to communicate or a more obvious way. But if I'm the only one, then totally fine. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing because obviously I have my end a very different looking Moodle
Right.
probably. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
um, Mary Alice said I saw the message that evening. Um, Yeah, I don't know, but that is strange. I will tell you too, it was very last minute on my end. I actually had to file an emergency writ. So it wasn't like I knew earlier in the day. So a lot of it was probably me too, because at the very last second, I'm like telling everyone I cannot be at class. But um
No, and
that's
I
strange that
totally understand that. That's all good. It's just I
yeah, I
don't.
just the messaging not coming into the next day, that's very strange.
Yeah.
When someone else said that they got it.
Yeah.
Does anyone
So
else have that problem with me messaging via Moodle?
okay, so it's obviously just me.
Sorry.
N-
At least you know,
No,
I guess
I understand what you're saying. Mine kind of tripped up a little bit. And I think what I did, to be honest with you, is I quickly went into my emails and I typed in um Alex's first name and then it popped up. So I didn't get it right away in the Moodle. What I did was I just quickly went into my emails and just was like making sure that I didn't miss anything. And that's how I got it. So I don't know if that helps you out at all, but
Yeah, thanks, Heather. And
thanks.
then
Sorry.
I think
yeah, I think
also
because we can't see each other or we can't talk to each
right.
other, like I had no way to just ask the class, what if anyone knew anything. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
because I also didn't get it until I checked my email because it didn't show up on Moodle at all until
Huh.
like a day or two later for me.
yeah, and the same thing for me with assignment two. So I didn't get the message. Um, and so I handed it in on the 10th in the morning, which is fine. It was a good exercise and I did my best. But I didn't see your message again until way later about posting another thing and all that. So there's maybe my thing
It's
is
like
glitchy,
lagging. Yeah, I don't know. That's
something.
weird.
Yeah, which,
They did just update Moodle, and I didn't know that they just did it to us. And then I had to also figure out the new formatting. So,
yeah.
I don't know if it's the update. People are saying it's not this class, but they were experiencing it in other classes. That's weird.
Yeah, because it
Sounds
looks
like
like all
a
of my notifications are set up correctly, but I don't know. I can ask Alana about it.
Yeah, no, that's really
Yeah.
strange. I mean, I appreciate you letting me know though too, because that way I'm obviously more aware too, like it lags or like it's not a real time. like that moment you get a notification or, there's like some
Yeah.
lag to the messaging and stuff. Um,
Yeah. But no
that's good
sweat,
to know.
just letting you know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you letting me know.
Okay, I have a sidebar
Just
question just real quick. I'm sorry.
sure.
Okay,
No,
I
you're
was
fine.
looking for the Moodle, like the recording, and I couldn't find it. So can you somebody like guide me through like where was it? Was it underneath like the weeks?
Yeah,
Did
it's
I?
under the Westlaw heading. So I put it under the
Oh,
same subject heading.
okay.
It's a link to a YouTube because the video is so long, the recording is too long to just like upload because it creates problems.
I see it. I
Um,
got on my readers. I see it right now. I apologize.
Um,
Sorry.
no, 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 you're fine. And I'm sure you're not the only one that couldn't find it. And so it's the recorded one of what was missed, but also obviously I recorded the in-class one so that if you wanted to review, because I know Westlaw's kind of overwhelming. And the same will be true for today's lecture. Citations are a little bit tricky. And so I will post the recording and like put the link on from like the YouTube page on today's like heading. So that way it matches the like content type, right? Like the subject matter. Um,
And Heather, I don't
but
know
I
when,
will do.
oh, sorry, I don't know
No,
when
no,
you
go
go,
ahead.
but like, sorry, Alex, I was spamming you with emails because I was like freaking out trying to find it myself. And I had to go like refresh it like 4 or 5 times, and finally it popped up for me. The second recording, that is. But then I could finally
That's
see it. Yeah, it
Okay,
was
thank
weird.
you.
yeah. There, I don't know what this lag is. That's awful.
So where's the Westlaw video located on? Because I'm on the Westlaw tab and I don't see it at all.
Yeah, scroll down and it's the
The link.
recording. It's just, yeah, the link, and you've got it, you have to copy and paste it. It's not a live link. So there's one from the first class and then there's one right below it for the second class.
I hope
It's
you
right
found it.
under the key site.
Got it.
Like, yeah, the key site flags. That was part. Yep.
Great. Any other questions, comments, concerns before we talk about today's material? Please, please let me know what's going on in all of your brains related to this class, at least. Um, Nobody. Going once, going twice.
Wait,
Okay. Oh, yes.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I feel like I did, I don't know. I don't feel like I did very well on that assignment. I don't know. I feel like,
Well, we shall see. I'm just kidding. I don't know. It's not I want to probably try to tell people I don't expect perfection. Again, I am reasonable. Like, I don't expect you to just create this like amazing perfection document, right? We haven't talked about citations at all. I'm merely trying to see if you can just walk through the steps of using Westlaw and like getting to like semi on point cases, right? Like that is the goal. It's to practice. I do not expect perfection. If that brings you any type of relief from anxiety, or anything like that, Kristen.
because I think I spent like hours on one question, like researching through, and I was like, am I going down the road? You'll just have to look at it and tell me if maybe I just went wrong.
Maybe, and maybe not. I will let you know though. But also that's
Okay.
part of this whole process, right? Because I mean, that is a part of researching, unfortunately. I still do it to this day. I will spend hours and hours looking at a very like narrow issue and go down my own like rabbit hole. And I try to equate it in, I guess, the hip kids say like the YouTube black hole to me. Like it's similar to that where you just like click on videos and it finally end up somewhere and you're like, how the hell did I get here? Like you
Mhm.
just end up in this black hole. That is what Westlaw's like sometimes. So that's part of this is just practice, and that's not, I mean, that is the nature of researching in the legal field sometimes. And I still do it to this day on many topics.
Gotcha. Because I was
Um,
like, maybe I'm completely off track, or I don't know.
well, we'll fix it if you are, and there's time to fix it. That's why I did practices and not just expecting you to just magically have it happen on the midterm exam without any type of practice, right? So we'll handle that. But I'm sure you did great. So don't fear. It's just a practice exercise, right? I am also posting today. Um, I post like I'll call it like an outline. That's what I call it. You want to call it a study guide, that's fine too. But basically, the point of it is all the different topics we've covered thus far that are fair game on the midterm. It's just a guide to help you in preparation. If you're not aware from looking at the syllabus, next week is our midterm. And so I will talk about the formatting of that at the end of class and address any questions any of you have. And we can vote. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's what I'm going to do, unless someone has a better suggestion. Voting on a kind of office hours, day and time, so that all of you have an ability to ask me live instead of through the lagging Moodle page, your questions in preparation for the midterm. So we'll do all that at the end. But today, our topic is citations. Citations are a very, very, very important, almost as important as learning how to use Westlaw. I will say it is second to that because now that you know how to use it, when we start producing documents, right, you have to be able to give the citation to what you've just researched. So your research kind of goes limp if no one else can find what you're trying to talk about. The point of it is a judge or their clerk, as we call them, which is their staff attorney, or the opposing party's paralegal, right? Or the other lawyer himself, herself, want to double check and verify the things that you cite to. And if you don't know how to do citations, it just causes a lot of problems. And the lawyer you work for in the future will be very impressed if you're already very proficient in legal citations. So that's kind of the topic we're going to cover today. I will give one other caveat. It comes up every semester. I am basing my lecture today, which I will talk about, on the Blue Book. So let me just share my PowerPoint before I get on my soapbox. So let me share my screen to today's PowerPoint. Okay. Oop, nope, that wasn't the right button. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you all can see this. Yes? My screen looks black. Okay, there it goes. Can everyone see, I hope, um, this PowerPoint? So I want to talk about this lecture is completely based on what is called the Blue Book. The Blue Book, you can buy one online if you want from like Amazon. I don't think it's necessary, but if you want to have one, go for it. They're not super expensive. I think they're like 30, 40 bucks online. Um, I want to say they're on like the 21st edition or something like that. I think mine is the 18th. I don't know, or maybe it's the like 7th. I don't even know what edition mine is, but I bought one in law school because we're required to. Um, and every rule that I'm giving you today is comes from the Blue Book, and that is what we're taught in law school. Now, I give this caveat because in practice, in reality, loads of lawyers cite, and it's not technically the Blue Book standard. And so, please, none of you come for me and attack me that I like am teaching you a different way, right? Like I'm trying to explain up front, it is coming from the Blue Book. So if someone ever wanted to get upset with you, like some lawyer who's an asshole, because most of us are, you can be like, excuse me, sir, ma'am, I'm citing the Blue Book. And that'll shut them up real quick. So I'm gonna tell you there's a caveat that you may see other citation formats, other professors may have a little bit of a stylistic change to some of the things I'm about to talk about. Please understand it's kind of like a more in practice reality of lawyers get lazy. But everything I'm teaching you is the Blue Book standard. So with that, moving on. Again, I kind of already just touched on this, but I'll say it again. Why are we talking about citations? What is it? Like, why do we care? Um, again, I mean, I said it makes your it makes your research limp. That's probably not a good sentence to use, but basically, your arguments, the lawyer's arguments, any document that's produced is usually going to be supported by a reference to a law, right? Some type of legal authority, some type of primary source, whether it's a case, a statute, right? Something, right? And you have to give a citation to those authorities. And so we do have this standardized way of drafting those citations through the Blue Book. And so that consistency, it clues the reader into like where this is coming from. And so if you understand citations, you can learn a lot from a citation. And so when you make mistakes in citations and it's noticeable, it's like a bad spelling mistake. It's annoying. People definitely think things if I read a document full of citation errors, especially if you're making the same error over and over, right? It would clue me in that it's not like a oops, just like a spelling mistake. It's like, no, you think that's the way to do it and it's wrong. And it bothers me. And like I said, the worst of all is you completely miss the mark, and so no one can find what you're citing to. And if I can't find what you're citing to, then it doesn't seem real, right? Like you're making up the citation. And I don't want to think that. It probably is real, and you just accidentally didn't know how to cite to it, right? But that's why citations are so, so important. Please, please pay attention or come back and watch this later if you want to zone out right now. But this is super, super important for researching and writing. Um, I didn't talk about this when we talked about Westlaw, and it was for a reason because this is my all-time pet peeve. There is a feature, just like when you highlight and do things on a document in Westlaw, there is this idea of a copy with reference. And when you do that, it like Westlaw creates a citation for you. Are they always right? Is it always the correct citation format? No. No. Is it a good place to start if you're just completely clueless on citations? Yes. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's completely off base, but this should not be your standard practice of using Westlaw's generated citation because it is wrong. Um, it's actually technically wrong every single time you cite to a statute because it only uses the annotated version, and we'll get into that. So there are times where it's really wrong and it's always wrong. So please don't make this your standard practice. And that's why I didn't talk about it and don't want you all to get used to using it. Now, the Blue Book, my favorite book. It's my all-time actually least favorite book. It makes no sense. That's why I also just am not super gung-ho that you all need to purchase one. It's kind of confusing. It's a uniform system, but the layout of the Blue Book is very confusing. It can be kind of overwhelming, because it's grouped by like states and then like federal courts and then international jurisdictions and then different weird sources. And so it's really overwhelming. And we're not going to cover every little last detail of different citations. I am just teaching you what I call the basics or the foundational citations that you need to do. And I don't suggest buying a blue book and just reading it for fun. That seems insane to me. Okay. So these are the things I'm going to cover today, and these are the things I expect you to know for the midterm. We're going to learn how to cite to actual judicial opinions. I can see, hopefully, the wheels turning in your head that that's a duh, because the majority of the common law, right, is based in precedent, which is judicial opinions over time, right? So we're going to cite to judicial opinions. We're going to cite to statutes. And when I say statutes, I mean federal statutes as well as Louisiana ones. And constitutional things, both state and federal, but I will not test on that necessarily on the midterm. I might on the final. It's not on the midterm. Um, statutes, judicial opinions, and court rules. Those are the things I'm concerned that you understand and fair game for the midterm. Okay? So please stop me at any time if this stuff doesn't make sense. Please, please, because I really want to make sure you all understand what's going on. Now, let's talk about judicial opinions first. I'm trying my best to explain citations. There's kind of four basic parts to a citation. It's the name of parties involved. Part two is what I call the case ID, which is got a lot of little subparts to it. Then you give a date and the deciding court in parentheses at the end. And then a period goes at the end if you're just giving the citation like that. Why? Because it's like its own sentence. Okay? So, if we look at this example to the right, this Smith v. Jones case, if you notice, and I say it under kind of the details on the left, the parties, the case name is always italicized. Hence, I just said always. I, never say that, but I did. I just said it. Case names are always italicized. And it's always a V, not a VS. It's not versus. We do V, little v. So it's last name, V, last name in italics. Then you give a comma, right? And then comes what I call the case ID. The case ID is what we talked about when we were talking about how you can find this stuff in an actual book, the reporter, right? That's what the case ID is all about. And so you're going to give the volume of the book, the reporter book that this case is found in. So that's what this 979 is. The F sup is the shorthand for the reporter series, like the book that it's in. And then the 726 is the page number that this judicial opinion begins on in that volume, right, of the Federal Supplemental Reporter. Does that make sense to people? Okay. And again, the last thing is the date and the court in parentheses. And so here, the shorthand is, it's a federal district court. It's the Northern District of Illinois. That is that shorthand, NDILL. And then it's the year only, the 1997. The only time you will give something other than the year is specific to Louisiana. In other words, with federal cases, you always only give the year. So I'll say that one more time. With federal cases, you always only give the year. Louisiana has a specific rule that we're about to talk about, and sometimes you have to give the day, month, year. But that does not apply federally, okay? Questions thus far? No. Okay. So, we're going to get into just a little bit finer points now. Let's talk about the names. When we write out the case name, the names of the parties, we only give last names or the business name, right? If it was a business entity like, I don't know, Comcast versus Jones, right? You're going to say Comcast versus Jones. But if it's actual people, you only give their last names. And you're only going to give the names that are listed first. In other words, what I mean is if it was Don Smith and Tia Franks versus Jamie Jones and Marie Moore, it's going to shorten to Smith v. Jones because those are the two people listed first on each side of the verses. Does that make sense? You don't list every party, just the first one. Kristen asked a great question. Et al. Yes, Kristen. Et al. You beat me to the punch. I'm so glad you are paying attention. No, I'm glad. It makes me happy. Um, so there is this thing called et al. Because us legal people just like to use Latin and other things to seem cool. I don't know why, but I don't make the rules. So et al. Is something that people put on the end of the case name, and it's kind of a way to let everyone know there's like more. Like there's a lot more names. And it's like cluing the reader in, like there's a whole bunch of parties. And we're just not going to go through that trouble. Okay. Um, I'm not, again, I think that's a little too above this class. So like I'm not going to throw some kind of curveball and expect you to like put et al. I'm more concerned that you don't put the full name of people and you're not putting multiple parties' names on each side of the B. You just put the first. Okay. That's all I care that you know for the purposes of this class. But yes, et al. Is a very important thing that is seen all the time. Okay. Now, we're in Louisiana. And so generally, I don't have just only Louisiana people in my class. And so I talk a lot about medium neutral case citations because it applies to a lot of other states. And I didn't want anyone to feel like this was never shown to them and then get angry. But I will not test on this. Okay. So, like, please, you can read this if you're interested, but I'm not going to test on medium neutral citations. The gist is people, courts, whatever, think that it should be a more easy way for people to access and find cases. And so these reporter books, it's a money-making thing, it's a business, and they have like a monopoly, long, long, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so they're trying to kind of convert to this case citation. It's called a medium neutral case citation, but I'm not going to test on it. We don't use that in Louisiana. It's not used federally. So I don't really care for you to know these things for our purposes in this class. If you move states, this might become useful to you. Okay. Now, I told you a second ago, Louisiana has this weird rule and for judicial opinions, right? And so I want to make sure that all of you know it because you're all in Louisiana. Um, it if you look at this citation, you'll probably notice the differences than what we just went over for the federal stuff, right? Um, there is day, month, year, and there's this weird 932345 before the parentheses. And that's not the like traditional reporter ID that we just talked about, right? That's something different. And so we're going to talk about why is this? Well, there are rules in Louisiana, and I didn't make them. I just follow them. And the Louisiana Supreme Court came out with this rule. And it's basically any appellate level judicial opinion after 1993 has to be using this kind of special format. Okay. So it's not all Louisiana judicial opinions. It's got to meet kind of two big criteria. It's an appellate level decision and it's post 1993. So 1994 or newer. Okay? So I'll say that again. It has to have two requirements. It has to be Louisiana appellate level decision and it has to be after 1993 to have the special rule apply. So yes, appellate level and higher. Yes. So as in it's the Louisiana Court of Appeals or the Louisiana Supreme Court. We're not talking about district courts. But if you think about it, that's basically all the judicial opinions you're going to find on Westlaw are appellate level decisions. Like that's generally what we cite to. And so anything after 1993, if you're using a citation and it's to a Louisiana thing, you probably need to follow this rule. Okay. So anything after 1993, 1994 and newer. Now, the this uniform public domain citation that they call it has this one little insertion which changes the order of the the kind of parts of a citation that I just went over, right? I just went over the you give the name of the parties, then you give the case ID, then you give the deciding court and date in parentheses at the end, right? Those were like the parts. This throws in one little thing that makes it different, um, which is this 93, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That is thrown in before the parentheses, and the case ID that we're talking about is at the end. Do you see that? And so that's the a big difference. And the other big difference, like I said, is the date. You give the month, the day, and the year in this format. You don't just give the year. You give month, day, year, just like it's shown here. Now, you're probably wondering, well, where do you get this number that you see in front of the parentheses? And I want to show you. Okay. So I'm going to switch over to Westlaw so that you and I can look at the same thing. Oh, it's going to make me re-log in. One moment. Kicked me out. Okay. Let me share my screen. All right. Okay. So let's say you're conducting research, right? And you find a Louisiana case post 1993 that's an appellate level decision or higher. I'm going to go to my history because I've been doing a lot of things lately. Let's look at this. Perfect example. Okay. So this is a very new case. It came out in 2024. It is from the Louisiana Court of Appeal First Circuit. And so those should be the like ding 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 special rule, like clue you in. So does anyone want to take a stab at what this citation would look like? Please put it in the chat. Don't just like yell it out. But um I can like zoom in if it would be helpful. Okay. This is good. This is good. Okay. So I'm gonna put the correct citation and then we're gonna talk about it. Uh, All right. I don't know. Okay. I gotta ask a question. Why did you put 4/2/25? Where did the 4 come from? Where did April 2nd? Oh, the rehearing denial? Yes. I assumed that, but I didn't want to also make assumptions. Yeah. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Um, so it would be the December 30th date. The other big thing is remember to italicize your case name. That still applies. It's an always. Remember that. I rarely say that. It's an always. Always your case name is italicized, okay? Now there's a little finer points that I want to bring to your attention. You notice that some of you put the KA or you put the full 2023, right? And mine is just says 23-0939. So the rule is that you drop the letters and you just put the last two digits. But if you put the full 2023-0939, I'm not going to count off. I'm more concerned that you drop the letters. Okay? Drop the letters. You put in your parentheses LA, but the A is a little a. It's not a large A. It's a little a. Always. It's always capital L, little a, period. Then you can put appellate. I did not. That's probably the correct way. I just get lazy. And then whatever circuit you're in. So if we're in the first circuit, right? So you were right to put the 1. You might change that out to 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Depending on which circuit you're looking at. You give the full date. Again, you should drop the first two, like just do 24 or 25 or whatever day you picked. So 12/30, 24. Close your parentheses, your comma, and then your traditional case ID, which is the 406 Southern Third 429. Again, the 406 is the volume of the Southern Third reporter, and this opinion starts on page 429 in that reporter book. Okay? The 230939 with the KA, that is the docket. That is what the First Circuit is giving it. That's their numerical system. And so it's their docket number for this case, for this judicial opinion. And so that's where this little new case ID comes from. Okay. The last thing, and I'm glad you asked this, do you say state? Because do you do state v last name, or do you do Louisiana versus last name? Or do you do state of Louisiana versus last name? In Louisiana, the common rule is we just put state, state v whatever the person is. Different states do it different ways. I think if anything, you could put state of Louisiana v blah blah blah, but I would just stick with state. That is kind of the common practice amongst Louisiana people. It would not be the same in other states. Because some states say like the people of Washington or whatever, right? Here in Louisiana, we don't do that. It's just state. We represent the state of Louisiana. It's a great question. Nicole, great question. That would just be 05-90. Correct. So please look at the chat, people, if you're not. Nicole asked, you should always exclude the letters. So if it's 2005-KA-2098, it would just be 2005-2098. And I said yes, or 05-2098, right? Drop the letters. Does that make sense to people? Do you want to practice another one? Yes. Okay. Let's do one. Hmm. Let's go back to my history. Here we go. I'll pick a non-First Circuit opinion. Okay. This case is what you're citing to. It's on point for whatever issue you're researching. In case you were curious, my question that I was researching was whether something constitutes testimony or not, if it's testimonial in nature. Because if it's testimonial, it implicates the confrontation clause, to nerd out here a little bit. But that was the issue I was trying to research and write a motion on, so that's why I found this case. It is out of the Louisiana Fourth Circuit. So I'll give you a few minutes. I will type into the chat the correct citation, so maybe practice on your own, or you type it in the chat if you want, or however you want to do it. But I will give you a few minutes and then I'll type in the correct answer. Okay. I think most of you got it right. Um, I just put the answer in the chat. So the biggest difference is obviously changing out to the Fourth Circuit, right? I think the other really big thing that I didn't talk about, I know it seems nuanced, but is where you place commas. There is no comma before the parentheses, only after it. Okay? I know that's a small detail, but it matters. It's annoying when you put them everywhere. So you only put a comma after the name of the case, right? And then after the parentheses before you give the traditional reporter ID, the case ID. Okay? And I put a period at the end because it's its own sentence. Yes, it matters the date form. Does it matter the date format with the 06 versus a 6? Is that what you're asking, Kristen? No, I'm not going to care that much. And if a lawyer does, like, dude, they need something to do. They don't have enough work to do. Um, that's fine. Yeah, so put a period at the end if it's in its own sentence. It follows kind of like traditional grammar rules. Like if you are writing a document and citing to it as you're talking about it, you'd put a comma after and then continue writing your sentence, right? But we're doing it as its own sentence, so you put a period at the end. Does that make sense to people? Yes. Okay. I want to talk about um maybe a Louisiana Supreme Court case. Um and practice that with you. So let's find one. Uh Whoops. Let me change my jurisdiction. Hmm, Okay. Yeah, include the appellate. I got lazy. But if you don't, if that's like the only issue with your citation, I'll get over it. Lawyers are lazy. I'm lazy. So sometimes I just go, you know what I mean. But yeah, you should include it. Okay. Tim is on the money. This is the correct citation. So the biggest difference with Louisiana Supreme Court cases is just the LA, right? That's how you know it's a Supreme Court case. There's no appellate or circuit number or anything like that, right? There's only one Supreme Court in Louisiana. Um, let's look at a non-criminal, something non-criminal, right? Let's get out of my world because that's definitely not the whole legal world. Okay. I wanted to give you something more complicated, and most civil cases are more complicated with at least the case name because loads of people are suing loads of people, right? Or businesses or whatever. So let's try this one. Okay, I'm gonna type it into the chat unless y'all need more time. Okay. think y'all are all pretty much on par. There's one big thing I want to talk about in this case specifically, which is there are two docket numbers. Yes, which is confusing. Glad you brought it up, Nicole. This is why I picked this because it happens a lot. You should go with the first one. If you're ever confused, I'll give you a little hint if you haven't picked up on it already. At the very top of Westlaw, there's this little bar, and it kind of gives you each of the portions of the citation. So, like, for example, with the case name, right? It's got all these V's, and you may be like, what the hell? I don't know what to put. Westlaw did it for you. And that is correct. I mean, it's the first two V's. That's what you go with. It's always the first. So the same with the docket. You go with the first one, which is the 0111, not the 0112. Again, see this little, see, they just did it for you. So when in doubt, I mean, come up to that and look at it. Little practice tip. Correct. So when there are two V's, and sometimes there's three or more, just do the first ones. Um, let's see. Let's do another one. He gets sued all the time. Let's see if there's any good ones out with him right now. Ah, here's a great one. I know it's sad that I know like whose names to type in for a lawsuit. Okay. This one, which we really haven't gotten to yet, but we're here, so let's talk about it. This one is an unreported or an unpublished decision. How do we know that? Well, it tells you literally all over the page. It literally says right here, unpublished opinion. Check court rules before citing, right? And the other way you know it's not reported, up here it tells you it's not reported in the Southern Reporter. And if you still were confused as to like, is this reported or not somehow, the only citation you have to go with is the Westlaw citation. Oh, Jesus, Pete. This 2021 WL 6194369, that's the Westlaw citation. The only time you are using the Westlaw citation is because it's unpublished. There's no other citation to give because it's not in a reporter book. So we use the Westlaw citation. So generally, we're not going to cite to unpublished opinions. But I want to show you this one. And I will post in the chat the answer. I don't expect any of you to just do this one right. So instead of putting the traditional reporter ID at the end, you're going to give the Westlaw. So it would be sorry, this one's long. I'm typing as fast as I can. 12, 30, 21. Wowee, that's a long one and intense. Do I expect you to know this for the exam? Hell to the no. I'm not cruel. I at least just want to show to you though. Probably for the final, maybe. I don't know if I'm feeling mean, but not for the midterm, right? But I just want you to see how complicated it can get, right? There's a lot of parts to this, a lot that we didn't discuss, because I'm just trying to get to the foundation. But the case name is confusing because it's an inmate suing the warden in a civil suit. And so that's why his name is listed as well as the state of Louisiana and his DOC number. DOC stands for the Department of Corrections, if you didn't know. And Daryl Vanoy is being sued, but he's being sued in his capacity as warden of Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola. And so you're not just giving his last name, you're giving his title because it's not in his personal capacity, right? It's not like he's getting a divorce from his wife. An inmate is suing the prison, basically, right? And he is the warden of the prison, if that makes sense to you as to why it's not just his last name. Um, it's a very nuanced, specific reason why you give his title. It's his official capacity, not his personal capacity. And at the end of it, you're going to put in parentheses that it's not published to just clue your reader in again. But generally, like I said, you don't cite to them anyways. But do people have questions about this or anything so far? No? Okay. I'm going to assume everyone knows exactly what they're doing. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about something. We're going to talk a lot about judicial opinions, if you can't tell, because there's a lot to cover. And so the next kind of topic within citations of judicial opinions is something called a pen cite. But it's not just judicial opinions, um, but generally it is. And for our class purposes, when we talk about pen cites, it's going to be for judicial opinions. And this word that I'm using, pen cite, what the heck is a pen cite, right? I will go back to my little PowerPoint here and show you what a pen cite is, right? It's basically a more specific citation. What we've talked about thus far is like a general citation to the case, like as a whole, okay? But if you're writing and you find some language that they're using in their opinion, like in the analysis that the court is doing, or maybe there's just some kind of quote that you really want to pull out and you want to quote that portion specifically, then you're going to need to use a pen cite. That's what we call a pen cite. So it's like to a specific page within the judicial opinion. Okay? So I give an example here. Oh, here, let me make it full screen. My apologies. I'm talking away and not realizing it. Maybe this is easier to see for people. Um, I give the example here of this case out of Idaho. The pen cite is the 1092. So if you notice, it would be like a general citation. You're just adding one more element to this citation, which is the page number from the quote that you're giving. So if you remember the case ID portion of a citation, I said is the volume number, right? Then the reporter book, and then you give the page number the opinion starts on. So a pen cite, you add a comma and then give the page that this quote is found on, because it may not be the same as the page that the whole judicial opinion starts on. So let me show you in practice, because I might be just talking like words in the sky to some people. And so like let's look at a case and I'll explain. Let's go back to Westlaw. I'm gonna go back. I don't freaking know. Let's type in who else gets. You know what I want to do? Oh, poor Ed Orgeron when he got divorced from his wife. Since we're all Louisiana people. Orgeron v. Orgeron. which is not a criminal thing, it's a family matter, right? And this is a Louisiana Supreme Court because they took it all the way up because they got lots of money that they're fighting over. Okay, so let's just say, hypothetically, us lawyers love hypotheticals, but let's just say, hypothetically, you work at a law office that does majority family law, right? And divorces and those kinds of things. So you find this case doing your research, and there are, oh, not this one. Good God. Go back to a different order. You find this case, and you think to yourself, like, man, hold on. This case language is like right on point. Like, this is what I want to use. Because the language the court uses really is amazing. So I'm going to look at one that actually has language. Okay. So you come to the judicial opinion, you're reading the case, and you're like, huh, I really like right here where it's saying, like maybe the client you have has these like an agreement as well, like a contract, and you're trying to find a similar case, and this one's it. And so maybe this right here, this language about this timesheet, any of this kind of language, right? Like you're trying to pull this out and use it in your argument. This would require a pen cite. So the first thing you need to do is formulate the just general citation, right? Before you can add the pen cite. So I can see at the top of my screen here all the kind of elements that I need to make the citation. So I'm gonna type in Orgeron, the Orgeron, and go 2400676. It was a Louisiana Supreme Court case in June of 2025. And this traditional ID. Okay, so like this would be the general citation to this case, right? Without using any kind of pen cite. But now I want to add this language. Let's pretend I went, you know, in Orgeron. The court decided X, Y, Z. And then I want to give the citation with a pen cite. This is what it would, 24. 676. Oh, sorry, not page 2, it's page 4. My bad. Please change the 2 in my thing to 4. Uh, 6. 6. Okay. My apologies. This is the correct citation. It's not page 2, it's page 4. Now, some of you may be like, how the hell do you know? Where'd you get these numbers? Well, we talked about it once very briefly, but let's talk about it again. We talked about these little stars, stars, within a judicial opinion on Westlaw, those are page numbers. So as you scroll, there's page 5. There's page 6 down here, 395, right? They're all here as you scroll and read the opinion. So depending on where you fall, your quote falls, that tells you what page you're on. But there's a star and then a 1 star, right? And you're like, well, then which is which? How do you know? It's pretty obvious, but if you look at the general citation, right, we know from the case ID, this judicial opinion starts on page 390 of the Southern Reporter. So the star 394 correlates to that. Whereas, because if it starts on page 390, it has to be 390 or above, right? Like common sense here. So the star 4 are just the pages. So if you remember what I just said earlier about the 24-00676, the docket that's being assigned by the actual court is what goes in front of the parentheses. And so everything is starting off from like 0, basically, right? It's like if you were to print and just have the actual judicial opinion page by page. So it's page 4 of the judicial opinion, looking at just the docket number. So it's almost like you're giving the citation twice, right? Because we do this weird docket number, then the parentheses, then the traditional reporter. So that's kind of also why you give the pin cite twice in a way. Does that make sense to people? I know it gets kind of confusing, especially here in Louisiana with our stupid rules. Does everyone understand how to find page numbers? Again, these little boxes up here, those are not page numbers. Please, please do not fall victim. It happens every semester. This is not a page number. This is a head note. If you were to hover over it or click on it, it's going to bring you to head notes in Westlaw. They're not page numbers. White boxes with numbers in them are not page numbers. Okay? Please, please don't do it. Don't fall victim. Someone asked, what is the difference between 1 and 2 stars in Westlaw? Great question. It's just their way of distinguishing the two formats, like the traditional reporter versus just the docket number. Because every once in a while, and I'll show you when we get to to US Supreme Court cases, they're reported in so many different books that sometimes the page numbers are close. So it's harder to tell which belongs to which. So the star is to different reporters. Okay. Does that make sense to people so far? Okay, okay, cool. Let's, please bear with me. Okay, please, please bear with me. Because now we're going to talk about the US Supreme Court, which has its own little funky way of doing things. So I saved the best for last. Um, oh, okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint again? We've been talking a lot about leaving out, putting in the date and the court, right? Like when we talked about just the generic way to cite to a judicial opinion, I said in the parentheses, it's always like the court and then the year. Or for Louisiana, it's the court and then maybe the day, month, year, right? That's what we're looking at. And so the big court that doesn't follow this rule is the US Supreme Court because they're their own thing. And because they're their own thing and they're so wonderful and omnipotent and whatever you want to say, but they don't ever include the court. Ever. So again, I rarely use that. They never put like that they are the US Supreme Court in the parentheses. Never. Never, never, never. Never do it. It is clear from the reporter book that it is a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Why? How? Like, if we really want to think through this, if you're one of those people that need to know the details of how we got there, let me explain. The U.S. Supreme Court is so special that they get their own books. They don't have to share books with other courts. So when you see their reporter books, you know it's a U.S. Supreme Court decision. So here in this example of the city of Indianapolis versus Edmond, the reporter book is called U.S. That only houses U.S. Supreme Court decisions. So it's kind of redundant to then at the end in parentheses put the court, because if you understand citations, you already know it's a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Does that make sense to people? In this example, I've also given you a pin site again. My dog is going crazy. Johnny, here. I've given you an example of a pin site. So again, the pin site is the 50. Page 50 is the pin site in this example. The judicial opinion starts on page 31 in volume 531 of the U.S. Reporter. This opinion came out in the year 2000. Does everyone see how I got that information from looking at this citation? Okay. I want to show you. Oh, go back. I want to show you on Westlaw. But before we do that, I did skip over something. We were so focused on citing to newer Louisiana Supreme Court decisions, right? We kind of skipped over, well, what if it's an old one? What if it's not 1994 or newer? Maybe there is some law out there that you really want to cite to that's old. So how would we do that? Let's find a case and figure it out. Um, let's find a case with Piggly Wiggly, because that makes me smile. A really old case. They've been around a long time, right? Pre-1994, I hope. I'm pretty sure they have. So I'm going to use my filters and look at the date. I'm going to do all dates before 1994. Okay. And I'm going to hit apply. Oh, down at the bottom here. Apply. Here we go. Beautiful. So, how would we cite to this case? It is pre-1994, but it is from an appellate level decision. You know, it's an appellate level court. The citation will follow kind of the generic form that I gave in the first slide. So what do I mean by that? You just use the traditional case ID before the parentheses. You don't insert the docket number, right? So let me put it in the chat so that you can see what I'm talking about. So we've gone back to like that generic format, which is you put the case name, you put the traditional case ID, right, with the traditional reporter. You give the court and the year in parentheses. That's it. Does everyone see that, understand? Okay. So let's talk about U.S. Supreme Court decisions now. I don't know what's a good one. Does anyone have suggestions instead of Roe v. Wade? Let's do one of my favorites that I love to cite too. Comes up all the time for me. Hmm. Okay. Miranda. Someone's Miranda rights, right? You have the right to remain silent. You know, if you watch Cops or any of you know what your Miranda rights are. The cops have to say it to you before they question you, right? It comes from this case, Miranda v. Arizona. So this is a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Look how many V's there are in this case. Wowee. But again, we just stick with the first V and the first people listed. And so it's Miranda v. Arizona. Okay, that's what we give the case name. Now, how do we cite to this case? I will put it in the chat so that you can see. And please feel free to do it on your own. Try it out on your own. Okay. If you're looking at the chat of my answer, again, always the case name is italicized. Then you put your comma. And we give the traditional reporter, right? This U.S. reporter, and then the year in parentheses. No court, ever, never put the court in parentheses. But this technically is right, but technically not. In practice, we do something with U.S. Supreme Court decisions called a parallel citation. A parallel citation is basically giving multiple reporters. So you're giving the reader all the books that this judicial opinion can be found in. And for U.S. Supreme Court decision, that's the common practice of how to do the citation. And if you notice on Westlaw, when you're looking at this case, you see this 86 Supreme Court 1602, right? Like that's a different reporter than the U.S. reporter. It still only houses U.S. Supreme Court decisions. It's just a different book. They get all kinds of books to themselves because they're special, right? There's only one in the whole country. And we take what they say very seriously. So they get lots of their own books. So if you were to do a parallel citation, which would be really impressive to me and to future lawyers that you work with, it would look like this. We generally give the US one first. We then do the Supreme Court, and the last one we generally use is the lawyer's edition reporter. And I will show you. 86. Does this one even have a lawyer's edition? It's so old, man. No. Yeah, there it is. 16. Lawyer's edition. The second. 694. Sometimes people call these string cites because you're kind of stringing together all the different reporter books. But they're also known as parallel citations. And so what I'm doing basically is giving each book that this opinion can be found in. And we generally give the US book, the Supreme Court Reporter book, and the Lawyer's Edition book, which is the LED that you're seeing me reference. And again, you put the year in parentheses at the end, no court ever, right? Because we know all of these books only house US Supreme Court decisions. So you always leave the court out of the parentheses. Questions, comments, concerns. Y'all are quite quiet for such an intense, detail-oriented class period.
Why? I guess this is my question, and this may be a dumb question. Why is it reported in so many books? Why not just one book?
Well, what a great question. So, I don't know the answer truly. I just always joke and say it's because they're just so special and they get lots of books. And we want to make those opinions more than anything the most accessible because they dictate the law of the entire land, right? Whereas, like the Southern Reporter, which is what Louisiana is found in regionally, it's a regional reporter. So, right, it covers state judicial opinions in like Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, like it's a regional reporter. And I guess I always think like federal people have way more money and they can publish a bunch of books and they're way older than states. Like they were coming out with judicial opinions and we still look at opinions from like the freaking 1800s, right? That come out from them. So they get all these different books as they've come out. But I really don't know the answer. I'm just bullshitting you. I have no idea. But they get a lot, a whole lot. We could ask AI. I don't know what the answer is. Nicole, it's the US, if that's what you mean by state. It's the US Reporter first, then the SCT, the Supreme Court Reporter books, then the Lawyer's Edition, the LED. That stands for Lawyer's Edition. Here, it's the second edition of the Lawyer's Edition. That's what the 2D stands for. So the second edition of the Lawyer's Edition Reporter. That's what that stands for.
And are all the other ones like different books are in, like 10 Ohio Miscellaneous 9?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
10.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So like here, I can show you like see how this footnote they're talking about a different court opinion, a judicial opinion, and they gave the string side as well. So like when you're reading judicial opinions and you see this, you'll see it examples of it. Like the more law judicial opinions you read, it becomes more common to you because you're seeing it as you read too. So this Messiah or however you say that versus United States, right? And they gave you the string side or the parallel citation the 377 US, then the Supreme Court Reporter, then the what? Lawyer's Edition. So they do it for you in judicial opinions because that's the uniform way of doing it. But yeah, it's all the other books too. Peyton asked, are you going to be able to use your notes for exams? Why, Peyton? What a question. We haven't gotten to covering the midterm, but I'll answer your question, which is yes. But I've formulated it in a way that you don't get the full class time. So, AKA, you cannot just like scroll through every PowerPoint I've ever created and spend all your time finding the answers. I kind of want you to have some knowledge, right? Like generically of like law and the different levels and structures of court. Like if you have to scroll back and look through all that, that's problematic. Um, but no, you can if you want to make a little here's a hint. If you want to make like a formula, like make yourself a little sticky note with like a formula of how to do citations for each kind, right? Or whatever. That would be my suggestion. But you do you. Do what you want to do, whatever works for you. Um, yes, you have a midterm. It will be next week. And you will be tested on citations. That's a fact. Okay. So that is Supreme Court. Does everyone understand? Okay. Now, like I was saying though, with Penn sites especially, it can get confusing because there's so many books, right? Which means there's so many pages listed within the judicial opinion. So as you see here, again, like we've got this star 507, star 1645. Then you've got down here, eventually you'll get to other stars, right? Like there's just a lot going on. But if you look at what page they start on, it correlates, right? So the US one starts on page 436. So this star 511 corresponds to that. Someone asked earlier too, why is it like one star versus two? It's because it's what's listed first. The US is listed first, so it gets the one star. This 1647 is the Supreme Court, which is listed second. Like I was just saying, you always list US first, then the Supreme Court, then the lawyer's edition. So the star correlates to that reporter book. So the judicial opinion starts on page 1602. This portion of the opinion is on page 1647, right? Does that make sense? People follow me. I know we're getting into the weeds here, but I just want to make sure you understand.
Can you say that one more time? You said that
Sure.
those stars correlate to. I know the three you're talking about. You're talking about, of course,
The
um, the
U.S.,
U.S.
the
state, and then the
Supreme, and then the Supreme Court reporter book, and then the lawyer's edition book. You
right.
give them in that order every time.
Okay,
You don't switch up the order, okay?
got it.
And part of that reason is too, because it's so uniform, when you're looking at the page numbers, the one star is going to correlate to what's listed first, which is the US reporter. Star is what's listed second, which is the Supreme Court reporter. But if you're wanting to double check yourself and you just don't trust that, like I said, if you look at what page it actually starts on, it starts on 436, right? So obviously the 500 page is like related to this because this says it starts on page 1602. So there's no way 530 can that doesn't come after 1602. You get what I'm saying?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
just
I get it
common
now.
sense.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you.
that's the way to think about it
Thank
with the stars and the page numbers. Okay. Again, as you're reading judicial opinions, you'll see examples of citations. Here we go with some more string cites or parallel citations to other US Supreme Court decisions, right? So again, the more you read, the more you practice, the more you immerse yourself in it, it becomes more common to you and it's so repetitive, it is formulaic, and so you just get used to doing it, right? Um, so any other questions about US Supreme Court decisions? No. Okay. Do we need to take like a 5 minute restroom break? Because I kind of do. And I also am about to move on to other topics, and I feel like I'm going to lose you all if I don't give you a second to breathe. So give me a 5 second pause. It is 7:33 by my clock. So in 5 minutes will be 7:38. I will resume then. Okay, I give one more minute. I said 7:39. No, I said 7:38. What am I doing? It's 7:38. Golly. Okay, let's go back to what we were talking about. Is everyone comfortable with just the generic full citation forms that we've been practicing thus far for judicial opinions? Because if you're not, please speak up now because we're about to shift into what we call short form citations. And so if you're not comfortable with the first step, you're going to be really lost with the other forms, okay? So I'm going to show you now what's called a short form citation. And you may go, what the heck is a short form citation? What is this language you're using, Alex? Well, basically, maybe there's a case you find and it has so much great language in it, you're not just citing to it one time. And that does happen a lot. Like you're citing it throughout your argument. And so when you do that, you don't have to list the full citation that we've been practicing every single time. You can use what's called short form citations. And so, in other words, once you've cited it in full, you can use the short form after. It's to save you time. Like I said, us lawyers are lazy. And so, if the full citation in this example I gave you is this Brown v. Helvering, which is a U.S. Supreme Court decision, right? Like, let's just say this is the full citation. I didn't give you the parallel cite because I didn't want to confuse any of you. But that's the citation, right, to the U.S. Reporter. There are multiple ways to do a short form citation. And so you can include just part of the name and part of the reporter. You can just do the reporter portion, right? There's multiple ways. It's not a singular way. But you may notice something that I put in it that you're like, what the heck is that? Which is this at 203, right? Like, where is this at language coming from? That's a pin cite. So you know how in the full citation we did the comma and then whatever page your quote comes from, or the language that you're citing to? Well, if you're using a short form, you use at and then the page number, not just a comma page number. Does that make sense? You add this at language. But again, once you know a full citation format, this stuff becomes a lot easier to do. You're basically just shortening it, right, in some capacity so that you don't have to give the full thing over and over. As you can see, none of them have the date. We don't really care once you've given the full citation. Okay? Are there questions about short form citations and what that means or how to do that? Okay. There's something else, and it's like a short form, but a little different, and it's called id. You'll see id all the time. Id, again, we love Latin things in the law field. It means like the same. So instead of using a short form citation after giving a full citation, you can use id. But id is telling the reader it's whatever I cited immediately before this. So, in other words, if you cited to that Brown v. Helvering case, and then you talk some more, and you cite to this Avco Corp v. Machinist's case that I gave the citation to, and then you go talk some more, and you pull out some other language from that case, the Avco Corp, that citation will be id, right? You're telling the reader, I'm citing to the Avco Corp case again. It's what's immediately preceding. If you wanted to cite to Brown, it wasn't what was immediately preceding. It's like got some stuff in between. So you would need to use a short form citation. Does that make sense to people? It only refers to the immediately preceding authority that you just cited to. That's what id means. Like literally look right above, right? Big things with id, if you don't notice, always italicized. Always. Just like case names, always italicized. And there's always a period after it. Always. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit more about id, because just like with short forms and the full citations, you can also do pin cites with id. And with id, just like with short forms, because like I said, it's kind of like short form, right? You put at and then your page number. So the example I gave at the very end, id period at 248. That means like whatever I'm citing to is found on page 248 of that judicial opinion. And like I said, it's always got a period after it, id. It's always italicized, always a period after it, even with a pen cite. Does that make sense? Questions, please ask away if you have them. Okay. Now, we talked a lot about U.S. Supreme Court decisions, but of course, there are more federal courts than just the U.S. Supreme Court, right? There are federal appellate level courts and there are federal district courts. And so these are the reporters that house those federal judicial opinions. The first one that I'm concerned you understand is what's called the Federal Reporter series. The Federal Reporter only deals with Court of Appeals decisions. So it's the appellate level decisions in the federal system, right? The different circuits. Those are all housed in the Federal Reporter. The Federal Supplement only deals with district court opinions. So the lowest level in the system and federally is the district court, right? And those opinions are found in the Federal Supplemental Reporter, which we simplify to FSUP. That's what that stands for, is the Federal Supplement Reporter. Now, I'm going to get nitpicky, which is why I underlined it, because it's, again, a pet peeve of mine. The spacing in these matter. There is no space between the F and whatever like edition we're in, like the second, third, whatever series. But there is if it's the Federal Supplement. There is a space. I know that's nitpicky. I do care. That's why I underlined it and I'm talking about it. The spacing exists with the lowest level, not for the Federal Reporter, which is the appellate courts. Okay, there's no space between the different editions, the different series.
Is the spacing between the F period and sup, or just the F period, the 2D afterwards? Or is it
All of
spacing
it.
between all of it? All of it. Okay, thank
All
you.
of it. There's actual spacing, yes. There is no spacing in the Federal Reporter. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Now, let's look at a federal opinion that's not the U.S. Supreme Court so we can put this into practice, okay? Again, I want to be practical and not just talk at you without looking at the judicial opinions. Okay. I'm going to find just a random, again, opinion, but at least it's not from the U.S. Supreme Court. Let's look at, let's see. Okay, this one will work. Let me share my screen. Share. Okay. Let's practice doing this citation, the full citation, not a short form. And I will write in the chat. Okay. I typed it in the chat. Ignore me if you need a few more minutes. But there's some nuances, and I want to point them out. Of course, always, the case name is italicized, right? Here we've shortened it to US. If you put United States, I'm not going to freak out. That's fine. We generally just say US. US v. Childress, which is the defendant or the other person's last name, right? Because it's an actual person. And so it's US v. Childress, not versus, no VS. Remember this. Then your comma, right? Then you're going to give the case ID. Here, it is the federal second series, right? This is the one that has no spacing between them because it houses the appellate level decisions. And so it's the 347 federal 2D, which stands for the second series, 448. The 448, remember, is the page that this judicial opinion starts on within that reporter series. You give the court and the year in parentheses, right? Like we were talking about the just very first slide, the generic rule. So here we don't have a state because it's not a state court. It's the federal circuit. That's why you see no state names listed. There's no LA or some other like shorthand for a state. It's the Seventh Circuit, though, because there are a bunch of circuits at the federal level, right? So we have to at least identify which circuit we're in, which is why we have the seven and the CIR, which stands for circuit, and then the year. Again, the general rule is just the year. We only put the day, month, year for that weird Louisiana situation, right? So that is what goes in the parentheses.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So I know how you're saying like the spaces and such matters and the period matters, which I get that. But I guess is it just up to the attorneys we work for just to tell us every time it's wrong? Really? I mean, there's no standard method besides, just what they tell us.
Mm, are you asking me like, is there a uniform method, or you're saying,
Yeah,
because like,
just to remember all these citations, or is just that's just part of being a good paralegal.
I mean the Blue Book.
Blue. Oh, okay, okay, gotcha.
All of this is coming from the Blue Book, but again, the
Okay,
Blue Book houses literally every state and every potential citation, which is why I'm like, that would be really overwhelming to someone who has just been introduced to the world of legal
that's what I was
citations.
wondering. Okay, I think because I went so far into it, I was like, where do we even start this from? Oh yeah, the Blue Book. Okay, now it makes sense. Sorry.
Yes. No, you're fine. Great question. I know we've
Okay.
gone down a real deep rabbit hole. So let's go back to the very beginning, that first slide, which was where is all this coming from? The Blue
Yeah,
Book.
that's where I was at. Thank you. Okay.
Yes. But at the same time, do lawyers like think that they know more than the Blue Book? Of course. Like they do it their way. Every once in a while, you work for an asshole. But I think it's really funny and great if you were to like, if they were looking like, what is this citation or what is this formatting you're doing? And you'd be like, the Blue Book? Because they all know what the Blue Book is. We all have to learn it in
Right.
law school.
Well, that's
So,
kind of like what I do now because I work in dentistry and I work for an asshole. And so whenever I'm telling him information, he's like, "Where do you get this from?" I'm like, I don't know, the ADA, the American Dental
Dental
Association. I don't know the
Association,
people that make the
yeah.
decisions.
That
Okay. That's where I
thing
was
that
getting
regulates
confused.
us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no.
Okay.
So yes, it's the Blue Book. Um, so if you ever had questions, like maybe you did know how to cite to something, or it's something like it'll even give you examples of how to cite to a website. Like if you're citing to a news article, let's say, or something potentially, the Blue Book would show you that in it. So that's why I say, I mean, yes, you could buy your own, but I don't require it, and I don't expect you to just like have a Blue Book. It could be overwhelming. But yes, that's what it's from. Um, but this is how to cite to a non-US Supreme Court federal opinion. Does everyone see that? Understand where I got that from and how to do it? Yes.
I have a hypothetical
Okay.
question.
Okay, go for
All right, let's hypothetically say on the midterm, right?
it.
You were to say something like, go ahead and do this citation, right? Would you say of the non-US Supreme Court federal court? And then if I hypothetically had like a little postie, I would say, okay, this is how I'm going to cite that situation on my little.
Let's just say hypothetically, I may be like, here's a fact pattern, kind of like your assignment. Find me some law and give me the citation to whatever you found. So
Okay,
it's almost like a two-part because one, you have to do the research and what you find may be completely off base. And then on top of that, you've got to give the correct citation to whatever it is you found. Um, that, or hypothetically, if I wanted to be nice and not just make you miserable the entire time, I may be like, hey, give me the citation to US v. Childress, a US Seventh Circuit opinion, to try to point you in the right direction. You still will have to get on Westlaw and find this case to get the other information to complete the citation, right? But I'm at least giving you things to be like, hint, hint,
that's a
right?
good hypothetical. Thank you.
You're hypothetically welcome. Um, any other questions? Great question. I'm sure the rest of the class is very grateful for your hypotheticals. Will I clarify if you're specifically looking for a Supreme Court level? Well, Sydney, when you say Supreme Court, I'm going to go US or Louisiana. But yeah, I'll probably tell you. But it'll be clear from the citation. If I just give you a citation and ask you questions about it, you should understand from looking at the citation if it's a Louisiana Supreme Court or a US Supreme Court, right? There's
Sorry, I
big,
meant like if we had a case to cite, or sorry, if you gave like an example of a situation like our last assignment and we had to find cases, does it matter if we're choosing from like, Louisiana Supreme Court? I mean, we can give like multiple examples, but I didn't know if you like will say if you want us to search for like higher court or if that's just like situational or
I
up to
think
them.
it's situational. I think obviously if I'm telling you like this action arises in New Orleans, then that's within the Fifth Circuit, and you'll have to figure that out. So that would make you think to yourself, a more on-point case would be something from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and obviously even better than that would be the Louisiana Supreme Court, right?
Okay,
To
yeah,
cite to
that
you.
makes sense.
But at the same time, right, we've talked about it's not just about the level of court. You've got to find a judicial opinion that's on point, which means factually similar and legally relevant. And so if you're finding cases out of the Fifth Circuit and that's what you're using, that's fine if it's like on point, right? But if there's a Louisiana Supreme Court that's also on point, that would be even better because that
Okay,
covers all of us,
yeah,
right?
gotcha.
Sorry. Um, my coworkers are in a trial and they just got their verdict, which is my gas, my audible gas. Um, wow, that's amazing. They just got a not guilty. It was a retrial. If any of you are from Livingston Parish, there's currently a trial going on that's all over the news. It's a criminal case, State v. Melanie Curtin. If you don't know who that is or are curious, you can look it up. But my good friends and coworkers are actually the ones trying it. I was at the trial the end of last week, and they just came out with a not guilty verdict. And the news just ran that story. So congrats to them because she got found guilty the first trial. That's wild.
Is
Anyways,
that the
I'm
is that
a
the hit and run case that's been on Facebook?
no,
No. Okay.
no. It is Google her name or Google the name Denny Perkins. and I will let you figure out the rest.
Son of a,
It's a
our
wild.
firm is doing that one.
Ah, well then yes, it's
It's
a
disgusting.
wild time. But anyways, that's crazy. Sorry, I just got completely just like blown away. Should turn off notifications on my computer during class. So, back to our class. Um, that is how you cite to the federal courts. Again, I think it was Peyton that asked, like, how will we know where to go? It's situational, right? If it's like a hypothetical, there's clues within the hypothetical. Like I said, if I'm telling you a certain area, like Baton Rouge, like that's the First Circuit, right? New Orleans, that's the Fifth. Uh, I don't know, somewhere other jurisdiction. You'll know which circuit court you're in. And of course, the Louisiana Supreme Court is overarching all of us in Louisiana. If you go out and find a case in Utah and that's what you use to cite to, no. Even if your citation's correct, I may give you like 1 point to be like, well, I mean, you did a good citation, but like completely no, wrong. It has no that doesn't bind anyone here in Louisiana. We don't care what Utah's doing, right? Okay? Makes sense to people. That's why I say this stuff kind of builds on each other. You have to understand the structure, then to conduct good research that's worthwhile. Okay? Now, let's just say instead of giving the full citation, we want to do a short form of this federal opinion that I'm showing you, this US v. Childress. Anyone want to try to do a short form? My God. Anyone? No? No takers? Someone. I don't have the brain capacity. Okay, I'm losing everyone. I appreciate the honesty. Let me show you how to do a short form of this case specifically. Okay. Ah, Nicole gave a great example. Here's a different way. Now, I tripped you up on it. So you put US and not Childress. I know I was saying like you put whatever comes first, but the exception to that is with criminal stuff because it's always the government versus somebody. And so it doesn't clue people in to put the US, so we put the person's last name because all of it is US v somebody. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, something of that variation. Yes, yes, Nicole. So your short form is correct too. Even though you didn't put the case name, you gave just the case ID, that's fine too. Like I said, there's multiple variations, right? So any of those work. Now, let's try to do a pin site to what their holding is right here. We hold that, blah, blah, blah. So if you want to tell somebody this is what the holding is in US v. Childress, uh, how would you give the full citation with the pin site? It would look like, well, first I would need to know what page it's on, and it doesn't say from my little view. Ah, there it is. 451. Did everyone see I scrolled up a little bit so I could figure out what page this is on? There's the little green box with the 451 star. So the pen site to that quote would be 347. what did we say this is? The Seventh Circuit? Uh, oh, what year is this? 1965. Okay. Like this. So again, the only difference, you add the comma with the page number before your parentheses. Short form with the pen site, you could do the 347. Like this. You could do that variation, right? You include the little weird at because you're giving not the full like case ID, right? So either one would work if it was a short form with a pen site. And of course, remember lastly, what we've talked about thus far is the id, like let's say you gave the full citation already and it's immediately preceding and you're now using id with the pen site, you would just do id in italics at 451. That's what that citation would look like, okay? Questions? No. I promise you we're gonna move on from judicial opinions. Um, we have talked already about the US Supreme Court. That's what this slide's about and about parallel citations. We've already gone down that rabbit hole. I'm not going to go down it again unless everyone is upset if I don't. But this is all about the US Supreme Court, like we talked about. There's multiple reporters. Generally, we cite to all three. It's called a parallel citation or a string citation. Okay? And I give you an example here with Miranda v. Arizona, which we covered earlier. Now, Louisiana is in the Southern Reporter. We talked about that already too, but I'm going to say it again in case you missed it. The regional reporter for the state judicial opinions is the Southern Reporter for Louisiana. Okay? So that's all I'm concerned because we're only going to focus on Louisiana. I'm not going to ask you to cite to other state judicial opinions, just Louisiana, right? And don't forget the special rule if it's post 1993 and an appellate level decision, which it will be. Okay. I told you I'm not going to test you on this for the midterm. Um, and I know I'm losing you all and it's getting late, so I'm going to skip over this slide. But generally, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This is not a complicated way to use citations. The biggest thing is you see this little squiggle S at the bottom. That stands for section. So it's called the section symbol. And you better get real familiar with it because we use it when we cite to statutes, which is what we're going to talk about now. And I am going to test you on this. So if you turned your ears off, turn them back on. Federal statutes, we've said, are housed in the United States Code, which is shortened to U period S period C period, all caps, right? You see it, an example at the bottom. It uses the section symbol. And the formula is you give the title number, then USC, then the section symbol, and then whatever section it's in. Okay? Now, this example gives you like all the little sub-paragraphs because you're getting really nuanced with your citation. But if you're just generically citing to the statute, you can just do the 42 USC section 405, right? You don't have to put all the little C2, CII, whatever. You don't have to do all that junk. So again, if you were to look on Westlaw, and we go to federal materials and look at the US code, Westlaw always uses the US code annotated. It gives you everything, so it's always using USCA. Do not do that on the test. We never cite to the annotated version unless you're citing to like the commentary about the statute. But on our exam, I'm not going to ask you to cite to commentary. I'm going to ask you to cite to whatever statute it is or ask you to find a statute on point. So you're never going to use the annotated version for my exam at least. So do not put U period S period C period A period. Do not do it. Okay. Oh, let's just say, hypothetically, you're trying to find something within the agricultural, which is found in Title 7. And you see here it's sections 1 to section 9206. So if you were to open Title 7, which houses agriculture, oh, if my internet will compute. Let's just say this is the statute you want to cite to. Oh, why won't my... Oh, there we go. It's just slow. It's lagging. Okay. Let's just say, I don't know, pick a random one. Let's look at the inspection and sampling of cotton. We have laws about that, of what that is like. So let's just say this is what your issue is and this is the law on it, right? You see that Westlaw's version of the citation is 7 USCA section 58. Again, we never use this A. We're going to take the A off and it's Title 7 of the US Code section 58. Right? That is what the citation to the statute is. Does everyone understand that? Okay. No one's asked, and maybe you're wondering, or maybe you're not. Yes, I can type it out, please. Um, there's no dates. Like, we're not talking about dates at all, like in parentheses or any of that crap. We generally don't put the dates unless you're citing to an older version of a law. Or maybe it literally just got changed, and so you're citing to the newest version, then you would put it in parentheses. But otherwise, generally, we do not use dates for statutes, just for judicial opinions. Okay? Just type this out. 7 USC section 58. So 7 section 58. Would look like this. That would be the citation to the statute. Use the section symbol. If you put SEC or section written out, I'm going to make mark off. Use the section symbol. Figure out how to insert it or create a keyboard shortcut or whatever you want to do. But use the section symbol, which is the squiggly S. Okay? I promise you we're almost done, guys. Promise. Now, I just told you, oop, we don't use the dates really, right? Oh, wait, wrong share of screen. Okay. And I told you, unless you're just like signing to a prior version or a really new version, otherwise we're not going to put the date in parentheses. We're not going to put the year. So don't do it. That's all I care that you know for federal statutes, because we've only talked about the United States Code, right? So title number, US Code, section symbol, and then whatever section the statute's found in. Simple enough. Louisiana, we've got a lot of codes and we have revised statutes. For codes, these are the shorthands. just like with the United States Code, which is for federal stuff, the state stuff also may show you the annotated version on Westlaw. Do not include the "an" for annotated. Just cite to the actual law, which is Louisiana Civil Code, and then the article. And so notice big things that I care that you notice. It's still the same like in judicial opinions. It's big L, little a. Do not put capital L and capital A. The shorthand for Louisiana is big L, little a. And the article shorthand is little a. So it's lowercase ART, not uppercase A. I know I didn't create the rule, but that's the rule. Again, generally, you don't need to put the year at the end. If you want to, I don't care, but we don't need all that. Unless you're signing to a really new version or an old version that's no longer the law. Okay? So that's the civil code. For criminal code and procedural codes and all that, they have their own shorthands, but it all follows the same kind of formula. Louisiana, and then whatever code it is, little a article, right? And then the number. Louisiana revised statutes use the squiggly section symbol just like the US code because they have sections. So the shorthand for Louisiana revised statute is this LA Rev Stat. Again, little a in Louisiana. Then you give the section symbol. Then you give the title number with a colon and then the section. Again, I didn't make the rules. I'm sorry. So in the US code, remember we give the title number, USC section, and then the section number. Like that makes sense. Louisiana does it all backwards. So we give Louisiana Revised Statute section, title number 13, colon, section 45022, 4522, right? Same rules apply. Don't do the annotated version. No need to put the date at the end. That would be the correct citation. That's all I have. So we are at the end. Do you want me to show you on Westlaw actual Louisiana statutes? Or are you good and you're just like, let me go home and live my life?
Can you show on Westlaw a sample,
Yeah.
please? Thank you.
Yes. Gladly. Okay. Let's go to Westlaw. Okay. Again, the quickest way to look at actual statutes and not judicial opinions, whether federal or state, is to come down to these tabs. I'm going to hit State Materials. I'm going to click on Louisiana. And I'm going to scroll down to Louisiana Statutes and Court Rules. And there's all the different codes and the revised statutes or whatever it is that you want to look at. Let's look at the Civil Code first. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to just like click on something random. Again, it's broken down into articles. I know there are title numbers, but we don't care. We're just looking at articles. So we're going to look at, I don't know. Obviously, if you're already married, you can't get married again. We don't recognize that. So this code article says, which is dealing with marriage, a married person may not contract another marriage. If you were to cite to this, it would look like this. Again, little a's, not big A's. No need for dates in parentheses or anything crazy. A lot simpler than judicial opinions. Okay. If you do this, okay, let's go to, and again, no annotated version. We're not citing to the annotated version, though that's what Westlaw shows you. I'm going to go back and go to the revised statutes. Obviously, because of what I do, I know that the revised statute for first degree murder is Louisiana Revised Statute 1430. So I'm literally going to just type that in up here. That is the statute for first degree murder in Louisiana. Okay. So if you wanted to cite to that, which is the definition of what constitutes first degree murder in Louisiana, it would look like this. Jasmine asked a great question, which is, do you have to use the civ? Because she saw just the C and C for the civil code. You're right, Jasmine. Lawyers get lazy, and lots of times they just do what looks like this. So if you do that, I'm not going to count off, but I will be annoyed. It's not technically Blue Book standard, but that's fine. In practice, most people cite that way. The same is for the revised statutes. Loads of people use this format, and I won't get mad if you do. But it's technically not correct, and if you want to be Blue Book correct, you spell it out. But I'll take any of those versions. What I'm concerned is don't put the annotated version, don't put the dates at the end unless there's a need to, and put the section symbol for federal code and for Louisiana revised statutes and little a's, right? Does that make sense to people? I think I have put you all through the ringer enough tonight. I need to talk about the midterm and we need to vote. So, the midterm is next Tuesday. I am done with it. It will be a series of true, false, multiple choice, and short answer questions. I said earlier, but I'll say it again. It is designed in such a way that you do not get the full time. You get 2 hours to complete it. Um, and I did that so that you literally cannot just scroll and like do a bunch of background checking yourself. But I also want to be fair and give you enough time to research because you will have to actually access Westlaw and conduct research and give citations. So you need to do the midterm on a computer, right? I mean, I can't imagine trying to do it on a phone or something else. That'd be insane because you will have to access Westlaw. Otherwise, I guess it's open note in the sense of if you want to make a cheat sheet for citations, by all means, go for it. I will gladly hold office hours, like I said. I have a lot of availability on Sunday if that works for people. I don't know if you would rather a different day. I'm all ears if you would rather Monday night. I could do that too.
Would you be
But I
available
was thinking,
to, I'm sorry.
no, go for it.
Would you be available to like maybe post some examples that we can do? Like a little quiz, I look at like a quiz or something. Not that it has to be graded, but that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, so I am posting citation practices.
Yeah.
So
Like,
that way, if that's what you're talking about, citation specifically, or you're talking about in general?
no, the practices, the citation practices. Yeah.
Yes. So tonight when I post the like outline, when I close out the Zoom, I will one download this and post it like the link to the recording so you can go back and watch it if you really want. And I will make live the outline, right, study guide, and I have included PDF doc versions of like some practicing for Westlaw and citations.
That's right. You did say that. Okay. I think it was just a lot of
Yes.
information today.
Yeah, it's a lot today. This will be probably the longest class. It will be during our class time. Yes. So you will come next week, Tuesday. I will make it live at 6 p.m. You have until 8 p.m. because, like I said, I'm giving you 2 hours to complete it. So you will have till 8 p.m. to turn it in. You will submit it through Moodle just like you do assignments, right? Now, people normally ask, do I have to stay on the Zoom? No, you do not. If you want to exit out the Zoom, you're more than welcome. However, I just want to at least warn you, of course, if questions arise during your exam, or I like send out a chat during the exam, you don't have that benefit if you're not logged into the Zoom, right? So that's kind of at your own risk. I'm obviously going to mute myself during the exam and there's not going to be any background noise, but I at least want to just preface by saying you don't have to stay on the Zoom, but you're kind of missing out if some major issue arises and or you have some kind of question, right, during the exam. But it is 2 hours long that you will have. Someone asked, can you take it early? No, you cannot take it early. You will take it Tuesday because that's not fair to everyone else. Also, I don't trust that you won't share it because everyone's taking the same test. Um, so everyone come Tuesday, 6 p.m. to take the midterm. How many questions will there be? I will give you a bonus question so you can have some bonus points. Um, and it's about, I mean, I don't know how to answer that. Some of them have like subsections, like sub questions, like one big question and then sub questions. Like find me some cases on point and then also give me the citation, right? That's like a separate question. Um, I'd say like 30. I'd say that, well, I know for a fact there are 10 at this very moment, unless I go back and change something. There are 10 true false, 10 multiple choice, and the rest is short answer. As you can probably guess from our hypotheticals, a lot of the short answer stuff is about doing actual research and finding cases and doing that and giving citations, right? When I say like short answer. Um, my suggestion to you, take it or leave it, I would start with the short answer first so that you don't get like time management wise, right? Um, but you do you. Again, just merely a suggestion. I will hold office hours. Can we say Sunday at like 2? Does that work for people? Or would you rather it later at like 4 or 6? Anyone have a preference? If it's my preference, I'd say 2. Nicole says later. Someone liked it. Mariella says, I'm fine with 2. Okay. Well, then let's say, uh, if I do, ooh, if I do, everyone's saying 2. Oh no. Nicole, unfortunately, since you're the only one that seems, I would like the feedback from A too. Yes. Um, I will not record it and post it, Jasmine. But if you reach out to me personally and like maybe that time didn't work for you, but you want to meet and talk, I will gladly hop on Zoom and answer any questions you have, right? We can pick a time that works for you. But I will be on here Sunday at 2 for the generic Q&A. I will grade assignment 2 and give you feedback by Thursday. like tonight, by Thursday, you will have a grade and feedback. So that if you have questions from it, you can ask me on Sunday and or in the meantime, right? Um, Anything else that I haven't covered or that you have questions about? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. Thank you for bearing with me through this very intense class period. And please, 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 while you're studying, while you're reviewing, ask questions. That's what I'm here for. I want you all to succeed on the midterm. It is 35% of your grade, as stated in the syllabus, but please ask questions if they arise. But good luck. See you all Sunday or some other time. Have a nice Tuesday evening.